Hello everyone, welcome to part 2. Now that we have the Digi grade drafted, we can officially start patterning the entire bodysuit. The first thing I'd like to pattern is the bottom of the sole, so I will take a big piece of paper and a pencil, place the paper underneath, and then I'll roughly trace around it, like really roughly. We'll be refining this later once we have the other patterns drafted. Now it's time to wrap the whole dummy in plastic wrap. When you get to the wrist part, make sure you put some sort of spacer, whether it's a paw or you bulk up some batting or something, to make sure that when you draft the pattern, the fursuit will fit over a paw. Now that everything is plastic wrap, you can start duct taping everything. Make sure you tape really thoroughly because this will be the final pattern. Now that we have half of the dummy taped, it's time to mark it up. I always start by marking the center line, both on the front and on the back. Then I'll mark the neckline all the way around. Then I mark a line where the foot comes off and where the sleeve does as well. And then on all of these seam lines, I will add tick marks so that I can line these pieces up later. For zip-on feet, I always add a triple tick mark where I want the end and the beginning of a zipper to meet so that I can line up the zipper perfectly on both the bodysuit and the foot. This will be relevant in another tutorial, so don't forget it. I'll mark a circle where I want the tail, and now we can move on to general rules on how to cut this up. Any curve that goes in, like at the hip or at the crotch line, there will need to be a seam there, so mark it. So I've marked from the inside of the crotch to the top of the hip, and there is another curve that goes in here that I will mark across. Don't forget to add tick marks as you go. And then any convex curves that stick out, you will want to do a line on them as well. For cutting up the torso, I like to make sure I have a shoulder seam, and then I will mark a side seam so that there is a front and a back panel. And then if any of your seams make a T, you'll want this to continue across so that this tick mark lines up with the seam. And then one final thing before I actually do the markings, I will cut the front of the legs in half on both the back and the front, like this and this. At this point, you can get a different color Sharpie and start marking the actual markings of the character onto the dummy. And the cool thing about using Sharpies is that this kind of alcohol can actually erase mistakes. Now that we have all the markings mapped out, you'll need to label every pattern piece with 3 things: what it is, fur direction, and color. Kind of like this. This is the belly, it's going to be ivory, and the fur direction goes down. Now that you have everything labeled, you'll want to take a few pictures so that before you cut it out, you know how everything is supposed to fit together. But like I just implied, get some sharp scissors and just cut it off the dummy. Once you have everything cut out, you'll notice that you have excess plastic wrap. You can just tear that off, and then once you're done with that, you'll be checking to make sure that it can mostly lay flat. There will be a little bit of hiccups, but fur is a little stretchy, and so if you can force it to lay mostly flat, then it's okay. For example, down here is pretty much flat enough, but this curve needs to be addressed. You can kind of see the top of the curve is here, and so in order for this to lay flat, you will just want to cut from the outside of anywhere around. I'm going to put it to the shoulder, and I'm just going to cut to that center point, and now this all lays flat enough. This is another piece. This comes up, but honestly it can be laid flat. It's this part here that can't be forced down. You can almost see the shadow line there. So I'm just going to cut to that middle of the curve here, and there we go. It's flat enough to cut out of fabric. This is an extreme piece. For this outer curve, I would probably do 2 darts, but this part that comes up needs to be addressed because it is a concave curve. And so since it goes up here, I'm going to start to kind of force it up to see where the line naturally wants to be. And you can kind of see it in the shadow here. So what I'll do is I'll take a Sharpie and mark where I see that shadow and label it just like everything else, and then cut everything out. Now that all your pattern pieces are cleaned up and flat, all you need to do is transfer the markings to the back side. And with that, patterning's all done. So I'll see you in the next part.